Well, thank you very much for having me here in the first place. Got the opportunity to interview such the interesting leader of the shipping industry, and for me coming in from Hong Kong, it's great to have physical meetings. It would probably take me 5 minutes just to introduce Laurence. To avoid doing that, maybe I just just shoot the questions, and then we can get to know Laurence better. Quite frankly, I think Laurence last name speaks for his family, 4 generations commitment in the industry, and also Laurence I've been doing the ship financing for 32 years. So when talking about chemical tankers in particular, with all due respect, it's always Odfjell and then Stokes, and the Tokyo Marine. But your commitment, is second to none. And I've also find that, for your own personal history, achievements, you've actually have been the chair, since 2010, and you've been a world traveler living in Singapore since 2012. You're a Yale graduate in the late 80s, and then you got your master's, in the early 90s in architecture. But I was thinking it's naval architecture, and it wasn't. So your journey, to your family business must be quite interesting. And maybe we start with the questions of, your journey in the family business, and your family's, commitments, in 4 generations, to this particular sector of shipping.
Thank you, Kenneth. First of all, great to be here today. I haven't slept a lot last night. My son brought home a flu. So I have a slight fever, not COVID, I tested. I'm 4th generation, we're from Norway. In Norway we have clean water, clean air. So the environment is important to us as a people. And I think the way Odfjell has navigated our 107 years history, that's always been part of our value system. As an example, we were the first to build stainless steel tankers. In Norway, we built the 4,000 deadweight ton MT Lynn in 1960. And that was the start of a journey that has brought us, we've been a world leader in what we do ever since.
Yeah, exactly. When people were talking about coated tankers, then you were doing stainless already, right?
Yes, we were the first to build stainless steel, and actually because of that, that was more expensive than coated tankers. And our biggest competitor, still our biggest competitor today, they retrofitted ships, which is a great idea, lower cost of capital. We'll talk about that maybe later today. But our time is money, and time in port was essential. So actually, us having more expensive assets led us to invest also on land. So we started building tank terminals where there was lacking infrastructure in South America to improve efficiency in port.
Yes, and your commitment, your building terminals also one of the first ones, to invest in China, when it was still more like the Wild West, if I may say. Well, I'm very mindful that we only got 20 minutes. Maybe we can get back to China when we have time. But sticking to today's topic about sustainability, you've been so committed to this, for a long time. Can you just talk about your company's philosophy in that, or how you see the trend going, as from a ship owner's perspective?
Thank you. Well, that's the context of the conversation today, and the context, as you've heard in several of the presentations today, is that fuel is going to become more expensive going forward, whether it's because of carbon tax, whether because it's more expensive to produce the e-fuels, etc. Also, alternative fuels are going to require investments in infrastructure. So all this is going to add cost, as has been mentioned several times today. In addition, as several speakers have mentioned today, there's no silver bullet. Nobody knows exactly which fuel will be the chosen fuel, let's say. So based on these 2 premises, fuel will be more expensive, and not knowing what fuel to use in the future, our way to navigate is very simple. 1, fuel efficiency, fuel efficiency, fuel efficiency. It's all about that. And it's available technology today. There's no reason to wait. We will talk about maybe a little bit later in this conversation what we've done. But fuel efficiency is what we do. I also heard that earlier today from another ship owner, which I was delighted to hear, and I also respect what they've been able to do on this. The other issue going forward is, since we don't know what is going to be the future fuel, we have to have a mindset of fuel flexibility. That type of technology is also starting to become available today, as has been mentioned earlier. And our view is, we're not going to bet on one fuel. We have survived 2 world wars. We have survived 107 years, 4 generations, with all kinds of family issues. So we're not going to bet the farm on one fuel. Our view is, we need to make sure that we have adaptability and flexibility.
Laurence, that's just going back to the, your point you made about fuel efficiency in the first place. I think between the line you're saying that even with traditional engine technology, you are going to make efficiencies, right? And that's probably the first step. People are doing it. But is it just slow steaming, or is it a bit more to that?
Actually, great question, and this is an important message to all of you and to hopefully other ship owners. We started focusing on this in 2007. The financial crisis hit, we were hurting, we were not cost competitive. So by 2014, we kick-started a process of cost energy efficiency initiatives in Odfjell. And it was really about survival. It was an economic need for us to reduce our cost. That has later turned out to be, of course, a good sustainable journey, good for the environment, but actually started with an economic, good business motive. And we as the first example, our core fleet, we went back to the concept of the steam engine, bigger propellers, slower RPMs, and we invested only about $1 million a pop, a ship. There were 15 ships, I think, maybe 16. I have colleagues in the room that will correct me if I'm wrong. Anyway, but $1 million, including off-hire. Those investments brought, on those individual ships, the efficiency down on average, between 25 to 30%. 25 to 30% efficiency gain just by changing propellers, changing the gear, and adding some ducts, the Mewis duct and others to improve propulsion. Those ships have on average saved $1 million a year since. So this is good business. I mean, the ships we did back then, 7 years ago, we've gotten $7 million back on a $1 million investment. Those are the best investments we've ever done. So this is good business. And that's something I think that a lot of ships on the water today, they should look at their propeller and they should look at this type of low-hanging fruit, I would say. That was decided on the efficiency on individual ships. I should also say, on a fleet basis, we have been focusing on, of course, on reducing our emissions, and we are now 2021 and now 2022. We are at 50% reduction using only available technology. We did this in 7 years, and there's 7 years to 2030. Which means anybody else, any ship owner, I'm making it a little bit simplifying here. Not all segments are the same. Not all trades are the same. But the concept that the IMO targets can be done in the time frame that we have, that we have proven, and many others have proven as well. It's not a problem.
Well, it's really reassuring to learn that it's actually you look at the whole situation from the economic point of view. So the whole thing actually makes sense, right? Rather than people thinking that, all this new regulation is going to add, add another bill, to the increasing cost, owners. I mean, maybe we can go back to a carbon tax, later, talking about who is going to pay the bills, whether it's owners, whether it's charterers, right? But you also mentioned, the different kind of fuel. I mean, we all know that different kind of fuel, right? But how do we get e-ammonia, e-hydrogen? What is like the global footprint, and how do you think all this fit into the 2030, 2050 absolute reduction, intensity reductions, targets. And then last week, Poseidon principle, we have more targets, with more trajectories, that are coming out, So what do you think all this evolution?
Wow. Okay. First of all, fuel flexibility. Our next ships will have fuel flexibility systems. There are engines already available. Other owners have already ordered engines that are fuel flexible, and we are developing fuel flexible ships that are also capable to run with zero emission fuels, no carbon fuels. So that is available today. So that part is, in a way, not the issue. But I'm an architect, so bear with me. Numbers are not my strength. I'm not a banker either. So let me give you some numbers about this, because it's a little bit. I'm going to row a little bit counter the current today. We have to stop this narrative that we have to urgently convert to e-fuels for the maritime industry. Why do I say that? The world fleet today consumes about 210 million tons of fuel, of heavy and low sulfur fuel. If you were to replace this with green e-fuels, because of the lower energy intensity of these fuels, that would mean you would need about 450 million tons, okay? So you go from 210 to 450. But you have to produce these fuels. And let's say that 5% of this on today's fuel, in theory in 2030 is going to be biofuels, but 95% is going to be somehow produced by electricity. That would require 5,500 terawatt hours of renewable electricity. That's shipping today represents 2% of global emissions. It's too high. But if we were to take all this e-fuels that is in the market today, shipping would consume 54% of global available green fuels. Doesn't make any sense. You take 2% of the problem, you use 50% of the resources. It doesn't make any sense. In addition, this is additional demand to what we already need to feed, to transport, to fertilize a growing globe. And you need that additional demand from the existing grid. And that grid is today not zero. That grid is being produced by coal, fuels, LNG, etc. Of course, luckily, unfortunately, there's a growing number of renewable fuels coming into that mix, but if you look on a world average basis, it's not there yet. So what does that mean? You would increase for shipping 2 to 8 times the amount of carbon emissions for the replacement emissions of taking from the grid electricity. 2 to 8 times. So what we think here is a good idea to speed ahead with green fuels. Mother Earth doesn't like. We're going to make the situation worse. Another important aspect to why then choosing between, I heard, and I have a tremendous respect for a lot of people speaking today and the engagement, but we heard almost we're competing with other segments for green fuels. Look, if you put ethanol or any green fuel into a car, or your electrical, let's say you are charging your electrical vehicle, and you, out of 100 kilowatt, you get 90% on your wheels. With a ship, that same amount of kilowatt is only 20%. 20%, because you have energy loss in every transition from the electricity producing the hydrogen to produce the ammonia, then go back on a ship to produce the hydrogen again. It's really not good for Mother Earth. So that's why my message around this is we need to focus on efficiency. Efficiency, efficiency.
Efficiency from currently what we have. And I think between the lines, you're also mentioning for the renewable energy, it's got to be coming from sustainable source. I think earlier there were suggestions about nuclear, and also Kevin, you put me here because not because I'm very diplomatic, right? So things like it's not going to be a repeat of the scrubber story, right? When the industry actually needs certain fuel, and then you try to find a lot of solutions on board. But whereas you need those sustainable source of fuel, to be produced onshore or something like that, right? So what are the solutions there?
Well, first of all, this whole energy transition, there are some major trends going on, and one of the key issues to make this successful is electrification. And electrification, just an example. Nowadays, mining companies are getting increasingly harder to get financing. But after you produce electricity, you need a lot of copper for electrification. So you need this stuff there to actually be able to deliver on this green transition. So there's a lot of issues here that we should let the numbers tell the story. Conventional wisdom. We started weather routing back in 2007, 2008, and you should have heard our captains about weather routing. How would a computer tell us how to navigate? Conventional wisdom was they'd sailed this route so many times that there was a lot of resistance to some guy with an economical background telling these guys that, hey, we can save a lot of money on this. But then certain journeys happen. The data spoke, the measurement. Key to all of this is measure your emissions, measure your data. And today nobody questions the value of weather routing. The first years we were using it, we were, by just working smarter, we saved 5% of fuel. 5% of fuel without investing anything but better knowledge and use of data. That was not hardware.
Thank you, Laurence. I'm very mindful of time. We're going to have time. We're going to talk about your company's initiatives in raising financing. You do the Norwegian bond of the year. The last year from sustainability angle. You have your idea about transitional financing. I wish Kevin would give us another 30 minutes. But so the last 30 seconds. So what would be your message to the audience, to the industry?
Well, first of all, I'm delighted about the Poseidon Principles. I think that this is another example of how we as the stakeholders are driving change. But remember, all of you bankers, especially for big banks that are not only in, let's say, shipping, look at the whole value chain. Last night, I revisited An Inconvenient Truth. You know the movie by Al Gore? And it's astounding. This was 15 years ago. That this movie came out, and I'd say that for the first 10 years after that movie came out, very little was happening. More things are happening now. We cannot be complacent, please. It's late. We've lost many years, but it's not too late. And the goal to reach 1.5 degree. It's every year becoming a bigger stretch, but it's still possible. But let's put our money where our mouth is, and let's think holistically. Thank you.
Thank you, Laurence. Thank you, Marianne.